Exactly a month ago, as Seahawks coaches and scouts were on their way to the NFL Combine, I rated the team's position groups in order of those that need the most help to those that need the least. A month later, and with NFL teams now through the first wave of free agency, I thought I'd revise the rankings and also recap where each position stands as everyone now turns their attention to the draft. Seattle has never been overly active in free agency, at least, not since 2013, and the Seahawks haven't been this year, so far signing just 2 players who were on other teams last season, kicker Jason Myers and guard Mike Iupati. Why haven't they done more? One thought is that the Seahawks are simply being selective, preferring to spend money on keeping their own players. Not many figured they'd re-sign both KJ Wright and Michael Kendricks, while also looking to maximize the 2020 compensatory picks for which they may be eligible. After not getting any last year when they were a little more active in free agency than some thought, Seattle currently is in line for 4th, 3rd, 4th, 6th and 7th, according to OverTheCap.com. The contracts that both cornerback Justin Coleman, $9 million average per year, and defensive tackle Shemar Stephen, $4.15 million per year, received each may have been a little higher than the Seahawks anticipated, each giving the Seahawks a better comp pick situation than they might have thought they'd have going in 4th and 6th rounders, respectively, with Earl Thomas equating to a 3rd-round pick and Brett Hundley a 7th-rounder. That Seattle suddenly found itself with a potentially good bounty of picks in 2020, potentially 11 overall, might have made the team even more cautious about its free agent spending and weighing even more closely the advantage of making a signing that might impact the number of picks it could get. Those picks can't be traded now, they don't become official until next spring. But the knowledge that they likely have those picks coming can give Seattle some flexibility heading into this year's draft and the rest of the offseason. The Seahawks will undoubtedly make more signings along the way, and oftentimes ones made later make as much impact as those made now, such as the signing last August of J.R. Sweezy after he became available when he was released by Tampa Bay. As Seahawks general manager John Schneider always says, while fans, media may focus on some specific events such as the draft and free agency, the roster-building process never really starts or ends. It's there 365 days a year. And maybe even if there's a perception the Seahawks didn't do a whole lot, Seattle has gone from having an effective cap space of just over $48 million when March began to $12.309 million as of Thursday. 23 NFL teams have more. Now, the rankings. 1. Wide receiver, number 2 on our list before, receiver now rises to number 1. There was already a concern about the health of Doug Baldwin. Now there is even more reason for worry with the news he may have a sports hernia surgery in April on top of off-season surgeries on his shoulder and knee, though it's worth remembering that none of this is necessarily new to the Seahawks. Seattle already seemed to be in the market for an upgraded receiver, anyway. Jordy Nelson visited this week as a street free agent, wouldn't impact the comp pick formula. Expect Seattle to continue to sniff around the FA ranks but also to take one in the draft. 2. Secondary. The secondary moves from 5 to 2 with the losses of Thomas and Coleman and no additions as of yet. But again, it's worth noting the team planned all along that it would lose those players. It's thought they never even talked to Thomas. Seattle seems confident Kalen Reed can be a factor to help replace Coleman at nickel, and that their young safeties will continue to progress. But it's hard to imagine Seattle won't add a corner or safety or two who could legitimately help out at some point. 3. Defensive line, number 1 before. This falls just a bit with Frank Clark having been tagged since then, though still no resolution to his long-term situation. But that was to be expected, and the Seahawks still are in the market for some pass rush help, as evidenced by this week's visit from former 49er and Bear edge rusher Aaron Lynch. 4. Offensive line, number 4 before. The OL is pretty much the same now as it was then with DJ Fluker back in the fold and Iapati essentially replacing Sweezy. But with only Dwayne Brown of projected starters seeming assured of being on the roster beyond the 2019 season, adding a lineman in the draft makes sense. 5. Linebacker, number 3 on our earlier list. This position has been apparently solidified for 2019 with the re-signings of Wright and Kendricks. But neither player is guaranteed to be here in 2020, and in Kendricks' case, his availability in 2019 is still unclear pending sentencing April 4 on an insider trading charge. Barkevious Mingo could also be a salary cap casualty. If a good, young LB were to fall into Seattle's lap in the draft, the Seahawks might be tempted. 6. Tight end. Okay, so as I wrote a month ago, the final 4 spots in this list feel like a pretty big drop in need from the rest. The exact timeline of when Will Dissly will return from his knee injury remains unclear. But the fact that Seattle has done nothing at the tight end spot so far seems to indicate confidence he'll be ready, or that they can make do with what they have on the roster. That said, this is regarded as a really good draft class for tight ends, and given the position's importance in the way the Seahawks like to play, expect Seattle to take a close look just in case. 7. Quarterback. This stays at number 7 only because Seattle's backup QB spot is a little more uncertain with the loss of Hundley. Seattle signed Paxton Lynch as a potential backup in January, but will undoubtedly add 1 or 2 more at the spot before training camp. 8. Running back. This also stays in the same spot. The Seahawks lost Mike Davis in free agency but have kept everyone else of note. Bringing in an undrafted FA or 2 for depth makes sense, but otherwise Seattle appears pretty set here. 9. Kicker. Punter. I had this number 9 the last time as well, on the idea that this position was pretty simple to deal with. Seattle has a punter and snapper in the fold and just needed to sign a kicker. Seattle did that in bringing back Myers, signing to him what is essentially a 2-year contract. With Sam Ficken also on the roster, there may be no need for any more additions here.